Hello and welcome to the agenda. I am Ajay Kaul. Today we will discuss about Pakistani invasion of Jammu and Kashmir on this day in 1947. It was this day in 1947 when Pakistan invaded Jammu and Kashmir to forcibly annex the state. Since then, it has been illegally occupying parts of Jammu and Kashmir while projecting a false narrative that the state wanted to merge with Pakistan. The episode also highlights massive failure of the United Nations, which let the aggressor Pakistan go scot-free and even accepted it as a party to the so-called dispute over Jammu and Kashmir. In the agenda today, we will discuss about these aspects and related issues. We have with us former top army official, Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia. We are also joined by Professor Sajjad Raja, a prominent leader from Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, who will give us perspective from the occupied territories. He is joining us from London, where he is living in exile because of Pakistani brutalities. But before we begin our conversation, let us have a look at this small report.
73 years back on this day, Pakistani tribals, armed and backed by the Pakistani army, invaded Jammu and Kashmir. The motive was to forcibly annex Jammu and Kashmir with Pakistan, as the ruler of the state, Maharaja Hari Singh, was not inclined to do so. The Pakistani raiders indulged in massacres, mass rapes and looting of mostly non-Hindus. Many non-Hindus women were taken abducted by the raiders, who took them to Pakistan. Maharaja Hari Singh did not have a good fighting force, and it was no match to the invaders. The advances of the rampaging Pakistani forces could not be halted, and they were on the verge of capturing Srinagar, the capital of Jammu and Kashmir. Maharaja panicked and sent SOS to then Government of India, headed by Prime Minister of India Jawaharlal Nehru, for help. It resulted in the signing of the Instrument of Accession on 26 October 1946. The very next day, the first contingent of Indian Army landed in Srinagar and began evicting the Pakistani invaders from Jammu and Kashmir. A full-fledged war ensued, and the Indian Army gave a deadly blow to the Pakistani forces. However, while the Indian Army was in the process of pushing back the Pakistani forces, Indian government approached the United Nations Security Council with a complaint against Pakistani aggression. On August 13, 1948, a resolution was passed with the UNSC mandating certain steps, with the ultimate step being plebiscite in the entire princely states of Jammu and Kashmir. The first step was that Pakistan should immediately withdraw all its citizens from Jammu and Kashmir, after which India was mandated to reduce its forces to the minimum level required for maintenance of law and order. Pakistan never implemented the first step, ensuring failure of the UNSC resolution. Interestingly, the world body never punished Pakistan for non-compliance of its resolution, and Pakistan continues to illegally hold parts of Jammu and Kashmir even now. Bureau Report.
Now let's welcome our guests, Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia and Professor Sajjad Raja. Welcome to the program, sirs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my first question is to Professor Sajjad Raja. Today the day is being observed as Black Day. Why so?
We call it Day of Horror, Yom Vahshat, because on this day in 1947, Pakistan invaded our state, Jammu and Kashmir, and tried to capture which they failed, and they divided it since 22nd October 1947. They are occupying part of it, denying all basic human rights and fundamental freedoms to people of Jammu and Kashmir under Pakistani occupation and Baltistan. That's why we call it a Black Day, Day of Horror.
Okay, General Bhatia, I'll come to you. So, how do you see this situation? Today is Black Day, as Professor Raja also mentioned, give a detailed account why it is called Black Day. What is your first observation?
My first observation is that it is a black day because this is the day when Pakistan raiders, as they call the raiders, but were completely orchestrated by the Pakistan army and the Pakistan government at that point of time in 1947 on this day, and they indulged in something which is which was loot, which is plunder, which is dividing the people, which created horror for the people, as the professor rightly put it. So I think it was a black day in the history of Kashmir and in the history of India also, because Kashmir is need to be part of India. So I will say it is not a black day for Kashmir alone. It is not a black day for Kashmiris alone. It is a black day for India, and that is what Pakistan tried to do, and we were trying to do for the last 73 years.
So, as I mentioned in the opening, it also highlights the major failure of the United Nations, because Pakistan was the aggressor, and India, when India complained about the aggression in Jammu and Kashmir, it let Pakistan go scot free without any punishment, without any penalties, and also accepted as a partner, or a party to this so-called dispute. How do you see that?
Uh,
General
I,
Bhatia, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that. Let us go back to 1947, 48, when we were just a very independent country. We had other priorities. We believed in peace. We believed in being a responsible nation. Still believe in being a responsible nation. But the fact is that we wanted to live as good neighbors. We want to live in a peaceful environment. Though Pakistan was created out of India, we still felt that we could live peacefully and could have good relations with them, grow both conjoined and birth could grow together. So that is how we went to the United Nations. And Pakistan never honored that. Though Pakistan keeps quoting the United Nations resolutions on Kashmir, it never honored that. Pakistan had exploited the people of Kashmir over the years. It has never bothered the people of Kashmir. It has exploited them. Kashmir has been an agenda for Pakistan to trouble India, to seek parity with India. It is not for the people of Kashmir. So it has exploited the people of Kashmir. Today, if you look at Pakistan with Kashmir, you look at the other side of the LSC, our side of the LSC, there is a tremendous difference between the two people. The development indexes are totally different. Human rights, if you look at it, they're totally different. The narratives are different, but the people are the same.
Okay, Professor Raja, I'll come back to you. I want to ask you the same question. Doesn't it mark the failure of the United Nations, which accepted Pakistan as a party, which was an aggressor, but they accepted it as a party to the so-called dispute?
Well, the UN has failed, no doubt, but UN is basically a combination of the various countries and
Have their own national interests, and those countries work under their own interests, and we can't blame them. I think it's basically the failure of government of India, because Indian government should have not agreed to the United Nations proposal that Pakistan is a legal and constitutional party to the dispute. That is the most important for us, for the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and for Indian people, and for people all over the world who love
who love peace and democracy and rule of law. Indian government should have not considered Pakistan as a party, and they should have not entered into talks with them. That is where the situation worsened. That is where the real problem is. That's my point of view.
But Professor, as we know that Pakistan violated the standstill agreement what Maharaja had signed with both India and Pakistan, and despite that it is presenting a different narrative, false narrative about that J&K wanted to merge with Pakistan. What do you say on that?
Actually, the standstill agreement, it was Pakistan had never aimed to have that sort of relation
with Jammu and Kashmir. The standstill agreement was signed in August, on 5th of August, and on 20th of August, the Pakistani Prime Minister Liaquat Ali Khan gave approval to the plans which were made by Sardar Shaukat Rashad Khan and Major Khurshid Anwar to invade and Kashmir. So Pakistan was never serious, or Pakistan never loyal to this arrangement which they had entered in with Maharaja Hari Singh. They have their evil designs,
and they later on acted upon those plans, which is called as Operation Gulmarg, and everybody now knows everything about that plan.
Right. General Bhatia, I'll come to you. As Professor Raja pointed out that it was wrong on part of India to approach UNSC at that time, and actually India was pushing Pakistanis back to their territory. What do you say on that?
Yes, I do feel that we could have continued with the war a little longer. We could have regained more of our territories in Jammu and Kashmir. But I would not really, say there was a time when we were just about, we had just taken birth. It was 47 October, if you recollect. We were an army which was divided between India and Pakistan, assets had to go. And like I said, we were acting very responsibly. But the fact remains today that when we look at hindsight, we could have definitely done things better. We were on a winning spree. We had captured strategic heights, both either side of Peer Panjal, if you look at the ceasefire line today. But the fact also remains that 1972 Shimla Agreement superseded the UN resolutions and the UN Council. And since Pakistan agreed to it, signed on 2nd of July 1972 the Shimla Agreement, thereafter Pakistan has gone back on the Shimla Agreement also and keeps going back to the UN.
But sir,
they're not interested.
But sir, General Bhatia, what I am talking about is like when we approached UNSC, it declared ceasefire, so it became ceasefire line. Shimla Agreement only confirmed that converting ceasefire line into LOC. So my point is J&K was divided at that time. So it was wrong on part of India to approach UNSC. The military campaign should have been continued and Pakistani should have been evicted. That's it, isn't it?
Yes, I agree with you. We should have gone and like evicted them from push them back to the present line of control. We should have continued with it. We were a stronger army that time. We were a stronger nation, and instead of going to the UN, we should have made sure that complete territory of Jammu and Kashmir, which is integral to India, should have been integrated with India as per the accession instrument signed by Maharaja Hari Singh.
Okay, Professor Raja, I come back to you. Now we know Pakistan has been presenting a wrong narrative even on the UNSC resolution, which mandates first step is that Pakistan should withdraw all its citizens, including regulars, non-regulars. But Pakistan has been projecting it otherwise, that plebiscite is not being held. So how do you see that? What is your view on
this? Again, I would say it has been the failure on the part of Indian government. The UN resolutions in 1948, UN Security Council resolution number 47 dated 21st of April 1948, and then UN CIP resolution of 13th of August 1948. Both these resolutions clearly asked Pakistan to quit, to get out of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. These resolutions asked Pakistan to pull out all armed militants, everybody who has entered in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, whether they are armed or they are civilians, to create disturbance, they must get out of the state. Now, that was the position in 1948, and when Pakistan didn't Pakistan signed these resolutions, Pakistan agreed to these resolutions. Pakistan was a part of this whole negotiation, and Pakistan agreed that they will pull out their troops and they will pull out their militiamen, the tribals, and they will pull out their citizens. When Pakistan had failed, then in 1949, 6th of January resolution or onwards, India should have not been involved in the negotiations or discussion, and India should have, this is my personal opinion, that India should have been walked out. India should have clearly said that, well, ask Pakistan to follow you first. If they don't, if they don't agree to your negotiations, your mediation, then there is no point. So here we are going out and will push them out, or will fight and will see, we will liberate our territory. That is what should have been done, which is not done. And I agree to General Bhatia. Yeah, mistakes have been made.
So India basically should have followed up on the UN resolutions and asked UNSC to implement those, which actually were never implemented. India should have insisted that Pakistan should implement those, honor those UNSC resolutions, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And India should have stopped further negotiations or further discussions, or India should have clearly said that, well, UN has failed because UN is doing mediation and Pakistan is not listening to or not acting upon the decisions which are being taken. So there is no point carrying it on. And then India could have liberated the territory. So yeah, this is Indian government's failure and the mistake.
General Bhatta, I'll ask you this almost the same question, because India has been on a defensive. Whenever the word plebiscite comes up, India goes on to defensive. No, there is not like this. The first step is to be implemented by Pakistan, and rest follows first step. And when Pakistan has not taken, so we have not been basically projecting the right picture. We have actually been not being able to project the right narrative. Don't you feel so, sir?
Yes, I think Pakistan hijacked the narrative in 1949. There were geopolitical compulsions at that point of time. Let me also put it simply. In the UN also, the powers sided with Pakistan. They always looked at, Azad Kashmir. So our narrative went wrong right from the beginning. So we should have insisted on it. I suppose the nation had different priorities, with their competing priorities of a growing nation, a growing population. And Pakistan took advantage of that. Pakistan had a single agenda, and the agenda was seeking parity with India. It was not Jammu and Kashmir alone. It was seeking parity with India. Kashmir is a manifestation. They exploited the people of Kashmir, Pakistan, for its own aim of the seeking parity with India, of troubling India. Pakistan could never come out of the birth pangs, and they exploited the people of Kashmir for that. And in the UN resolution, we should have been more forceful. We should have ensured that Pakistan abided by the UN resolutions in deterrence space, which we did not at that point of time. But my issue is, even now, in 2020, after the Shimla Agreement, where Pakistan, for the times at that point of time, signed the Shimla Agreement, they have never abided by the Shimla Agreement also. And we have to make sure that Pakistan abides by the agreement. So that is how I think 5th August 2019 becomes very important, because we have changed the narrative thereafter. We have changed the position thereafter, creating dilemmas for Pakistan.
General, you mentioned about the geopolitical compulsions. Can you throw some more light on that?
In the sense, we looked at a peaceful India, a peaceful rising. We had been through the Second World War. We had been through 200 years of British rule, and history has was not time to the Indian subcontinent, not only India, the subcontinent. And when they left us a divided nation. To integrate those 540 odd states, to integrate the people of India, because everyone said that India will disintegrate. So these were India's compulsion in the geopolitical this thing. There was interference from outside, and then Pakistan, a newly created state based on religion, wanted Kashmir as not only Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir to be integral part of Pakistan. So that is where we should have sorted out our own internal infirmities first. We should have resolved the issues with Pakistan by military action, because that is a language that Pakistan understands. And had we done that, today we would have a JNK, a full JNK, which is an integral part of India as a part of India.
Professor Raja, as you mentioned earlier that the plan was hatched in September and October it started. So was it also maybe India could not anticipate properly that this is going to happen at that time? Maybe India should have intervened earlier rather than later. What do you say?
No, it was anticipated, but the thing is, I would say, unfortunately, dirty politics was being played. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru ji was Kashmiri. Sheikh Abdullah Saab, who was in charge of the affairs in Jammu and Kashmir, he was Kashmiri as well. They both belong to the same tribe, which is Kohol.
So the thing is, Sheikh Abdullah Saab had his own political motives, and he wanted to divide Jammu and Ladakh so that Kashmir could be recognized as a center of power, and he wanted to obviously take the whole control of the situation, and he wanted to be more powerful, which Nehruji understood, as well, and he collaborated with Sheikh Abdullah Saab, and both Sheikh Abdullah Saab and Nehruji were staunch enemies of Maharaja Hari Singh. So it was basically politics other than the national interest. Government in 1948-49 in India did dirty politics. They ignored the
national interest. They compromised on the national interest, and that is how this situation went into Pakistani hands, basically. And even today, we have survived.
When we look at the Pakistani Foreign Office statements and then Indian diplomatic channels, they try to talk about the issue, and Pakistan puts the conditions that, well, Kashmir should be this, Kashmir should be that, India should be doing this, Kashmir, India should be doing that.
How come Indian government allow Pakistan to put this sort of conditions? India should straightway say, well, you are not a party to the dispute. We don't own you as a party. And as far as Kashmir is concerned, this is the legal and constitutional position. So if you want to discuss Kashmir, then better not to talk with us. Go to the United Nations and discuss with them what had you agreed there. So throughout, these years, we can see there is definitely there is a change in the policies being adopted and followed by this present government. Big, strong policies, more proactive approach. But still, I think a lot is to be done, and there are many aspects of the situation which should be looked at.
But Professor Saab, as you mentioned about relationship between Maharaja and Sheikh Abdullah, but I think towards the end they had mended their ways before Pakistani invasion, and I have read about that Jinnah even sent emissaries, 2-3 emissaries who had to give assessment about the ground situation. So all those things were happening. So Indian state did not actually pick up those vibes.
No, they were not. If you read between the lines, the history, the independent or neutral history of the Jammu and Kashmir, and you look at archives, those documents and everything, basically Sheikh Abdullah Saab was playing his own game, and Maharaja Hari Singh only wanted to keep the state of Jammu and Kashmir independent. They had differences, and Sheikh Saab was collaborating with Nehruji. They had more political power, and they had upper hand, and Maharaja was obviously, he didn't have that power, and he didn't have control over the situation. And moreover, it was British government basically, they had planned. This is very very much calculated now. We have spent years and years on this understanding, on this research basically. It was British government designed to create problems between Pakistan and India when they left India. And the purpose was that these people of Jammu and people of Indo-Pak subcontinent, they will be enemies to each other. They will be fighting with each other, and there won't be any development. And India and Pakistan and whole this area, including Bangladesh nowadays, this will be a market, goods market, services market, and then they will buy arms and ammunition from the Western world. So that was the design basically. British government was working under their own interests, which Pakistan and India both failed to understand, and they played in their hands.
Okay, we are running out of time, General Bhatt. I'll come back to you. As Professor Saab mentioned about British design to make India and Pakistan fight. But as I mentioned earlier, No, Indian government did not able, was not able to, was, I'm asking whether Indian government was not able to pick up the signals that Pakistan had designs on J&K to invade, to take military action. So was there some kind of failure on intelligence at that time?
Yes, I suppose so. But going back to the geopolitics question, I think it suited the world to have a weak India because a strong India was not in the Western world's favor. And like Professor Raja said, we were dependent on the West to buy our weaponry. If you look at Pakistan also, the West supported Pakistan in weaponry. 3.2 billion US dollars grant was given to Pakistan. So, and India was busy integrating the states, like I said, and we did not pick up the signals for Pakistan. Pakistan, as usual, believes in denial. So that is how they had the raiders coming in, rather Pakistani army coming in. So Pakistan played its part, and we did not understand Pakistan's strength. We did not understand what they were doing. Till it was a little too late. But when we reacted, I think we reacted pretty well on 26th October, 27th October. We sent in the troops, we captured the field, and then we started pushing the Pakistani army and the Pakistani raiders back inch by inch, hill by hill, as I say it. And we pushed them back up to the line of the present line of control in the nearly that area, which is ceasefire line. We should have continued with that fight longer, but it did not suit the West to have Indian troops taking over the complete Jammu and Kashmir. That is how the world started calling Azad Kashmir. There is no Azad Kashmir at that point of time. So it is the geopolitics of the world which wanted to see a weak India, which wanted to see a divided Pakistan and India, which wanted to see the two countries at conflict always, and that's how it has been. So this is geopolitics. This is the real politics.
Right. One brief comment from Professor Raja. What is the way out now? Is there any scope for undoing what has been done 73 years back?
Actually, constitutionally and legally, Jammu and Kashmir is part of India. Our king, Maharaja Hari Singh, acceded to India. He signed the accession treaty, accession document with India, and three subjects: defense, foreign affairs, and communications were handed over to India. And then later on, Sheikh Abdullah Saab's Constituent Assembly and then Jammu and Kashmir Assembly, they made amendments to those arrangements. Legally and constitutionally, Jammu and Kashmir is part of India, and this is now Indian government and Indian security agencies. They should plan how to protect their citizens. Constitutionally, people of Azad Kashmir, which is POJK, are Azad Kashmir. People of Gilgit-Baltistan, constitutionally and legally, they are Indian citizens. So they should be protected by Indian government. And we think the only way forward is the state should be unified. Now, people of Jammu and Kashmir, on both sides of this line of control, even in Kashmir Valley and in POJK, Gilgit-Baltistan, people are looking at other powers, like who can reunify them. We all just want to be reunited. We want to end these miseries which we have been going through for last 73 years. And this state reunification is the most important thing, which I think probably Pakistan can't do. Only India can do it. And whoever does it, they will win hearts and minds of the people of Jammu and Kashmir on both sides.
J&K should be reunited, and maybe India should pursue it more vigorously and more aggressively. But our time has run out. Thank you both of you for participating in this debate.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
This is all in the agenda today. Thanks for watching. I will be back with another important topic tomorrow. Till then, goodbye.